this actually today, first panel started with Dr. Starr actually making statement that connectivity is mother of all the issues. So I would like to start with the statement that actually investments are father of all the issues. Without funding, without access to capital, there will be no development of private sector. And without private sector development, there will be no development in our countries in CAMCA region. So we have excellent panel today to discuss multiple issues related to sources of funding, but also business climate and environment that enables businesses and financial institutions to operate in CAMCA region. We'll start with a presentation from Kristen Young from Case and White and Case, sorry. So we'll hear a little bit about investment environment, climate, and some maybe specific issues. Then Mr. Kenneth Angell, longtime friend of CAMCA Network Fellows and Central Asia-Caucasus Institute, Managing Director for Project Finance Department at U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, formerly OPIC, Overseas Private Investment Corporation. Then Mr. Mukhtar Bubeyev, member of the Board of Directors from Astana Finance Center and Financial Services Authority, to be precise. And then Mr. Zuhursho Rahmatulloev, co-founder of Alif Bank, as also a member of the CAMCA network from Tajikistan, but a bank that operates in Uzbekistan as well. Before asking our speakers to start their presentations, I want to make two brief comments. One is that I think with everything that is happening around the region, and obviously with the Russian invasion to Ukraine and surrounding the issues that surround that development, paradoxically, we will see, and that's my hypothesis, and at some point you may want to comment on that or criticize it. Most probably GDP of our countries in CAMCA region will probably grow. But it doesn't mean that necessarily that, living standards of regular people will improve, or some of the things that will be happening in some sectors of economy will be easier than before. And, but that's just something to keep in mind. The second thing is that there were several points today that how some bottlenecks in the transit and connectivity issues harm business development opportunities. And I would like to comment briefly because I think this shows that because countries didn't plan strategically in the past and didn't prepare for new type of developments or new opportunities, this is becoming obvious now that we didn't plan on time. Now we need something and we don't have that something. We don't have infrastructure in place, or we don't have services in place. Just to remind that depths of Caspian Sea is only 7 or 8 meters, at least at ports. And capacity of certain ports is much more limited than capacity of even railway. And sometimes we forget that infrastructure is not just one element. It has to be strategically seen. So I'm throwing some of the ideas, but not necessarily for our speakers to influence their opinion. But I think, as I said earlier, we may stay a little, maybe 5–10 minutes longer, and maybe have conversations about some other issues as well, important for investments and growth of our CAMCA region countries. So, Kristen, we'll start with you. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And when I received the topic for this panel about boosting the private sector through investments, I started thinking about my work over the past decade plus at White & Case, where we have worked on investment disputes in the region. And we have represented both the sovereign side in these disputes and the investor side. And I think when you're looking at opportunities, it's from both sides, both the sovereign state side and, of course, the foreign investor. And from the sovereign state's perspective, you're looking for the right kind of investment. You're looking for modernization. You're looking for new technology. You're looking for investment in local production. Those are really key elements and critical elements for the sovereign side. For the private investor, the foreign investor, that company is looking for legal stability, protection, and what type of opportunities are available for growth within the country. And so what I've observed over a decade plus in this particular area is that there have been significant developments in the region. Of course, signatures of new bilateral investment treaties, multilateral treaties. We were checking the numbers. Apparently there are, at our count, 291 bilateral investment treaties in force in the region, a huge number. You also have multinational treaties like the Energy Charter Treaty. And all these treaties give protections to investors for the investments that they make in those countries. And what's important is that those investors, when you go to make your investment, you need to make sure that your investment will qualify. So part of making sure that your investment will qualify for protection in case there is something that arises with your investment is making sure that you're making it in accordance with host state law. So you're not making your investment through illegality or corruption. We have seen this happen where there is an issue with an investment. It loses protection under those treaties when they go to seek compensation for a harm that they suffer. So it is important to take that into consideration. It's also important as a foreign investor to consider, do I have protection? Do I have a treaty that will protect my investment going forward? And we have seen companies try to restructure an investment after they've made the investment and a dispute has arisen. That has not been permitted, but you are permitted to restructure an investment pre-dispute. So you make your investment, you realize I don't have coverage for my investment, you can restructure to make sure that you have that. It must be done pre-dispute, however. From the other side of the issue, from the sovereign state's perspective, trying to ensure that that investment is done lawfully, they have included in their treaties requirements that that investment be made in accordance with host state law. You also see these types of requirements in the national foreign investment laws. So for example, Uzbekistan has a new foreign investment law that came into force in January 2020. Georgia also has an investment law. Tajikistan has an investment law. And in many of these laws, you have another additional requirement that that investment is being operated in accordance with law. So you see the government's really trying to ensure that they're attracting the right type of investment. So in addition to these types of instruments, you have your treaties, your multinational treaties, as well as your foreign domestic law on investments that provide you protection. What we've also seen in recent years is the development of regional arbitration centers to handle disputes that are private disputes between companies. So these bilateral investment treaties are disputes between companies and the government. These would be private dispute settlement resolution. And one of those examples would be at the Tashkent International Arbitration Center, which has developed over the past years to accommodate private arbitration and international arbitration in Uzbekistan. The Astana International Financial Center as well has an international arbitration center to handle cases. And they have over 1,400 registered companies currently. And it has handled over 1,000 cases, which is very impressive. Georgia also has an arbitration center as well. So I think you'll see this continue to develop in the region, a capacity to handle private disputes independent from the judiciary in a faster, more efficient manner, giving additional legal security to the foreign investment industry as they bring in additional investment into the region. And one final comment I would make is seeing, in addition to these instruments, we also have seen the Kyrgyz Republic ratify the ICSID Convention. So ICSID is here in Washington, the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes. All of the CAMCA countries are now have ratified the treaty, I think with the exception of Turkmenistan. And so, I'm sorry, Tajikistan. Tajikistan is the only one who's not a party to the ICSID Convention. All the other remaining countries have now ratified, including the Kyrgyz Republic as of April of this year.
Thank you. I think it sets, for any private investor, obviously, dispute resolution system is a very important element of the business climate in any country. Previous panel presented several small entrepreneurs from the region, and real people who are actually in business and who are doing things that really builds the economy and promotes the economy. Kenneth and Angell spent many years working in the region, funding many different projects in different industries. Kenneth, maybe you can tell a little bit about DFC and your experience in CAMCA region.
Certainly. Thank you, Mamuka. Thank you also to CAMCA for inviting me to participate in this panel. I've had the privilege of presenting to many CAMCA fellows over the years about OPIC and DFC during their visits to Washington, D.C. So it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. As Mamuka mentioned, and as I was thinking about the presentation today, as we heard over the past 2 days, there are many winds currently swirling around the CAMCA region. These include the war in Ukraine, sanctions on Russia, Taliban, inflation, rising interest rates, food insecurity, supply chain disruptions, oil prices, remittances, effects of climate change. All of these elements have and will have a profound effect on the CAMCA economies, leading to market volatility. While some of these investments will certainly be slowed and in some cases suspended, there will be opportunities ahead. And I'm here to tell you that the US government is prepared to assist and finance private sector investment in CAMCA countries. I'll have a short introduction on DFC, followed by ways that I suggest that the private sector can attract DFC funding. The United States International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, is the US government's development finance institution. DFC partners with the private sector to finance solutions to critical challenges facing the developing world today. This next slide, I think, is very important because it shows really the purpose of DFC, its mission. There are 3 sort of parts to keep in mind. 1 is development, 2 is foreign policy, and 3 is the private sector involvement. And you see with this Venn diagram how it all interacts, and at the center is DFC promoting the investments to build and deepen economic ties. This one is the investment focus. Many people have talked about what it would be as far as priorities. I like to think of it as a focus because DFC is open for projects in all different sectors. It just so happens that there, right now, with the US government and the Biden White House, there are certain elements that you will not find surprising along those items here. Mitigating and adapting to climate change. DFC supports private sector investments in renewable energy projects, including wind farms, solar, hydro, while helping businesses adapt to the realities of climate change. We've got healthcare, which is including a sustainable recovery from COVID-19, hospitals, and vaccines. Promoting inclusion, DFC helps underserved groups, including women and small business owners, access a host of essential services from banking to education to healthcare. And then increasing digital connectivity, DFC helps accelerate the adoption of digital technology that can pave the way for new economic activities and bring about prosperity. And then we have inclusive growth, with DFC supporting projects that benefit communities which are underserved and most in need. So these are some of the projects that we have now, some of our instruments. I'm not going to go into great detail on them, but it includes loans and loan guarantees. That's primarily what DFC does. I'm a loan originator. Equity is a new part. Primarily, equity is working with funds and those types of platforms. There's a very small amount that is directly for projects, and these would be for projects that are highly developmental and highly impactful. There's technical assistance, there's feasibility study, there's political risk, and there are investment funds. So these are the different tools. Oh, it'd help if I go forward. This is also a critical slide that I wanted to show you because there are actually two parts if you really sort of think of DFC. One part is a bank, and so we're looking for at those aspects that one would as a bank, and that's what you'll see on your left-hand side as you look at it. So it'd be commercially viable projects. We want to be able to see that it involves the private sector. We want to see that it is not something that we do not compete with the private sector within the country, so commercial banks. It's got to be something that is not available. For example, in some countries, commercial banks will only give loans for maybe 5 years or 7 years. But perhaps the project, what it really needs to operate is 10 years or 15 years. In some cases, maybe 20 years. And that's something that the private sector is just, the private commercial banks are just not able to provide at this time. On the right-hand side, as you see, is the second part. So there's the credit side, and now there's the development side. So there's three aspects here. Sustainable development. We're looking to see what is the development that this project is going to bring to the country itself, not to the United States, to the country. Complying with environmental standards. These are standards that are set by the IFC, and so these are very transparent, clear standards of what is needed. And then there are similar standards for social and labor. So all of the projects are expected to be able to meet all of these standards. It's a high bar in many cases, but that's what it is in working with a development finance institution. And while I'm talking about many of these elements, let me be clear. This is not just special for DFC. IFC would follow this, EBRD would follow this, Asian Development Bank. So any of your development finance institutions, even going down to the what I'll call a second tier, which would be the alphabet acronym, FMO, DEG, KWF. So all of these, that's what it is that they're going to be looking for. So when you look at a project, it's not just, yes, it's key, will you be able to repay the loan? But the other part is, it's the developmental. All of these institutions want to be able to see that there's development that is coming from it. If the project is successful, then it achieves the development aims. If the project is unsuccessful, yes, they don't get paid back, but more importantly, there's not the development aspects of what it is that one had hoped to have. So these are some of the sectors that are possible to be able to, for CAMCA to be able to operate. But what I wanted to say is that DFC has been active in CAMCA for 25 years. So as we heard in the first panel yesterday, if you can remember back that far, Luke Coffey said, one of the things that the United States needs to do is show up. My comment, I didn't say it then, but to Luke is, we've been there. Now, I know what Luke was talking about was politically to be able to have that, but we have been there. We're low-key. It's not something that goes trumpeting, but I've had the pleasure of visiting almost all of the CAMCA countries, working on projects there, and DFC has, and OPIC, have done projects in every CAMCA country except for Turkmenistan. It is a highly diverse portfolio of projects in sectors: finance, education, tourism, hotels, healthcare, agriculture, infrastructure, energy, light manufacturing. So you can see this very broad. It's not just the focus that I spoke of previously. This covers a broad range of projects in the areas. So for the sectors that I have up on the screen at the moment, these are these are sectors that I sort of see as possibilities of where DFC programs could work out. When talk of food security, so agribusiness, not the growing itself, but everything else, processing, packaging, cold storage, regular storage. All of these are elements because food security is very big these days. Logistics, transportation, being able to get it, renewable energy, infrastructure, water sanitation, transport, telecommunications, healthcare, financial services, education, and then being able to expand the internet to access those that are underserved communities, which would support telemedicine, fintech, and online learning. Then I'd like to just touch base for a moment with, and leave you with this as to what are the ways that the private sector can attract DFC funding? And again, it's not just DFC funding, but it would be funding for IFIs. So I'm going to suggest 8. Why 8? Because it was more than 3 and less than 10. But I think first and foremost is there's got to be a clear project vision, not just an idea. There has to be something that has a clear project vision of what it is that you want to be able to achieve. Development, very key. How does the project contribute to the development of the country? Do we have experienced partners? Are there strategic partners? Is there a track record in the proposed business? Number 5, equity and project completion support to support the project. Is there financial wherewithal? Is there appropriate leverage? Generally, for a startup project, you're going to look at something that's going to be around 50 or 60%. If you've got 3 years of operations and you're looking for an expansion by 3 years, and you've got 3 years of positive cash flow, it can go up to 75%. So, but the leverage, coming to DFC or any financing and just sort of saying, well, I've got 10% or I've got 20% and I'd like you to cover 80%, that's not going to get very far. It is helpful, but not critical, and it's helpful to have a favorable investment climate. Economic reforms encourage an inviting platform for investment, such as in Georgia, and the encouraging economic reforms that are going on in Uzbekistan. Absolutely key is number 7, which is a well thought out project package. What am I talking about? Reliable feasibility study that was done by independent and third parties. A quality business plan, financial models, audited accounts, economic impact studies. These are very important and increase the success of being able to get a favorable response from the financial institution dramatically. 8th, just a thought for you, engage a financial advisor. These are people that have experience in putting projects together, and they can work with you. And while I cannot tell you which ones to work with, the first question when someone tells me that they're working with a financial advisor and should I work with them is, ask them this: how many projects have they brought to DFC that have been approved? So in conclusion, I'm going to leave you with, DFC stands ready to facilitate investment in CAMCA. DFC is open for business in CAMCA. We're ready to partner with the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. That was very helpful and enlightening presentation. I wanted to ask you about which country you've done most of the project, but I will not, because I know the answer. It will be promotion of Georgia's. So our next speaker is, as we already announced, Mukhtar Bubeyev. And I think some of the points that Kenneth made, probably Mukhtar, in requirements for funding applies to your institution as well. Obviously, companies need to qualify for financing. I think this is a very interesting experience. First time in the region we have institution that raises capital for private sector, but it's a larger scale capital. So, Mukhtar, I'll let you speak about this important and interesting institution.
Thank you, Mamuka, and it's a pleasure to be in the final session of today, because you have the most dedicated listeners, and it's very easy to speak when people want to listen. So actually, on the topic of raising finance, on the previous panel, I think a lot of companies might want to expand, and so I want to invite them to the Astana International Financial Center to be able to actually get this financing for their expansion. Let me briefly talk about, well, three things I want to talk. One about AFC and what has contributed to the success of the AFC. Two, about some of the challenges, especially if some of the countries want to follow that route. And third, maybe what are the implications for the regional development and for CAMCA network specifically. So Astana International Financial Center has become operational since 2018. It is essentially a jurisdiction in Kazakhstan which operates under commercial English law in English language and with the purpose of facilitation of investment, not only external but also domestic and regional investment. And from that point, the commercial framework is quite flexible as to compare to the local legislation, and the financial regulation is more, I would say it's more in tune with what you have internationally. There are several layers of how it works. So you have a layer of regulator and court and international arbitration center. You have a layer of business support, and you have business, for example, development facilities for marketing. There is a green finance facility. There is a fintech facility, which specifically they focused on specific areas of business that need promotion. And then there are purely commercial entities, such as the Astana International Exchange. But also there is a human capital development area, because there was an understanding that if you're creating an ecosystem, you definitely need people there. And there is a special arm that is devoted to facilitating and developing human capital. And some of the figures that Kristen has already mentioned, more than 1,400 companies have been registered. Now, Mamuka, these are not all big companies, and actually a lot of them are small companies. And the majority of them operate in IT industry, because it turns out that the commercial framework is easy to facilitate for IT companies, especially when you have different classes of shares and you want to make investment attraction in this area. So IT holding companies, commodity mining companies, all sorts of companies. So it's not only a financial institutions that operate and can register in the financial center. More than 1,000 cases have been mediated mostly, but also in arbitration and the court itself. But it means not only companies that register in the financial center can use this arbitration clause and court, but also any company. So nowadays we count around 7,000 contracts regionally that are not based in Kazakhstan even, but they're using this clause because arbitration is fast and cheap, I want to say, but inexpensive. Let's put it in a more better wording. In terms of investment, so we counted around $6.5 billion invested throughout the last 4 years. 2/3 of them are direct investments, and about 1/3 through the stock exchange. And we think these are significant numbers, but I'll talk about the cost and whether it justifies having the financial center itself. So some good numbers. In terms of IT, we have a sandbox for financial fintech companies, and 44 companies now operate there. A few of them have graduated to become fully fledged financial companies, and one of them is a crowdsourcing type of company. And also for small investments, this is what is actually used to attract into smaller businesses. And people, like I said, human capital is a big focus of our work. Around 8,000 people have been trained with different certifications that are specifically focused for working in the international and English law-based financial center. So what have been some of the challenges? Because it's always nice to talk about the achievements, but the challenges are actually sometimes more important. I would go from those 3 to 1. So the number 3 challenge would probably be cost, because any country that wants to go that route, it's an expensive exercise. And the main cost is actually the human capital, because you want to attract internationally recognized judges, internationally recognized regulators. And these people tend to be pricey. And there is also actually competition around the world because you have other financial centers that also want to attract them. So you have to be internationally competitive with your proposals to them. Second cost is the marketing, because nobody knows about Astana International Financial Center. So suddenly you have to tell the whole world who you are, and this involves a lot of marketing costs. And IT, because a lot of, nowadays, especially cybersecurity, you want your IT to be impeccable. In terms of specifically AFC, I think we're reaching this year, in 2022, the first year when we will sort of break even, where the companies that pay taxes is roughly equivalent to what the country is spending for supporting of the. So took us 4 years to break even, which we think is very fast, but it could be longer. Second challenge, I would say, is the existing institutions that will push back because they like the way things are. And these are commercial and governmental as well. Commercial, they don't like competition. We have 2 exchanges in the country, and every now and then you hear sort of back and forth, so why do we need 2 exchanges and this competition? Banks as well. Banks don't like new because they fear the competition. On the sort of government side, you have existing regulators and existing courts that think that you're taking, trying to interfere in what they do. And again, there might be, well, there will be actually a pushback from them, and you need a lot of political will and persuasion and a lot of, and sometimes time for people to start to understand what are the benefits of the financial center to them. And number one challenge, I would say, is the size of the market. And this is not something new. Everybody knows each national country in itself is a relatively small market. And some of the questions that we heard in this morning as well, how can we sort of facilitate trade and be more regional focused? And this brings me to the third part of my intervention, is about what are the way forward? What can we do to grow, to facilitate for the regional investment and regional trade? And first I want to quote what Secretary Gutierrez said this morning. What are the companies looking for? They're looking for rule of and stability of law. And second, he said, I want to set up a factory and be able to export to all the countries without the need to go, well, the way I interpret it, without the need to go through every regulator in each specific country. So this means a regional expansion. And Kazakhstan in the last 4 years have been trying to promote AFC as a tool not only for Kazakhstan, but as for the region. And with limited success, I have to say, with the exception of Kyrgyz Republic, who with the help of Nazir actually utilized the Astana International Financial Center, brought businesses from Kyrgyz Republic, and they were able to benefit from it. Others, the utilization has been fairly limited. And what does it mean? Maybe we'll continue that route to try to use AFC as a regional hub, but there is a big limitation that it is viewed as a Kazakh project. It's because it's located in Kazakhstan, under Kazakhstani law, and therefore there is a maybe lack of ownership in the project. On the other extreme, and this was mentioned today earlier in the morning, you have, well, can we set up a customs union? Can we harmonize our legislation? Well, to those of you that have been, have been engaged in international trade discussions, good luck. This might take, decades, and it's a nice thing to have, but it's a lot of effort and takes time. So I want to conclude with an idea whether we can do something in the middle, whether we can use the benefits of the financial center, so the stability of the law, the English language, because it's also not a trivial thing in the region, and but at the same time to target the ownership question. And the idea is, well, let's have a vision that there is a regional treaty by a few countries who are setting up a regional financial center. And they participate in that financial center. And they participate in that treaty. And that treaty covers some of what we mentioned here, investment, courts, arbitration requirements. And under this treaty, if you are a private company, you want to invest in the region, You come into this regional financial center, register your company, and then you are able to operate in the member countries. A little bit like what in Europe you have with Societe Europea, where if you register a SE company, then you're able to operate throughout the European Union without the need to establish presence everywhere. But you can have branches, but you don't need to actually go every time and discuss with the local governments. So what is the benefit for the countries, member countries? They get we unite essentially our markets, and we get access to investments that wouldn't come to our countries individually, but they want to come to the region as a whole, because the region, well, it's still, population size is about half of Russia, but it's more or less sizable. For the international company, the idea of not having to go through to every country and deal with the local government, but just to come to one place and speak English, understand commercial law, because to those of you that think that there are many lawyers in DC who understand Kazakh or Tajik or Uzbek law, well, there might be, you may find them, but they're quite expensive. So, and compliance costs, have been going up. So the idea that they understand this commercial law, which is easy for them to comprehend, decreases their compliance costs, decreases their time and increases the marketing. So I think that there is interest from the investor side as well. Now, this vision means that countries need to agree. And like I said, existing institutions don't like that. They want to push back. And this is why CAMCA network is important. There is a famous saying that vision without execution is hallucination. So we need the CAMCA network to push forward and to start executing if we want something like that to be achieved. But this is only on the supply side. So on the supply side, you need people, you need who want to have this as a working model, so as a regional financial center. But on the investor side, we really need the support from the United States commercial entities who will commit and say, well, if you do set up, I will come. I, as for example, Caterpillar or John Deere, I will come and set up my entity there. And the support of the US institutions who will say, I will permit, for example, SEC or to allow banks or financial organizations to come and work in that area. And then only then, so when you have both things functional, then the vision will be able to work. So lastly, I want to quote what Victoria said yesterday morning. Don't wait for us. And maybe we should stop waiting. And CAMCA network, I urge you to start doing something in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. I think there were several very interesting ideas. Probably we'll all think about questions that can follow up. I had a very brief question. So when you mentioned cost, is it cost for you to operate your center, or you're talking about cost for the companies to be in the part of the, or both?
Both, because so first of all, cost to operate operationally because it's expensive. But second, in the initial phase, you want to invite more companies, so you have to be competitive in terms of pricing in exactly the same area, for example. And that means you have to somebody has to, there's no free lunch, so somebody has to pay for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now, Zuhur, so floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I may stand, if you don't mind, of course, sitting.
Don't dance though, because it's not stable.
No? All right. Okay. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel, given the fact that we have enablers, facilitators, financiers, everyone who wants to make sure that you succeed as a private sector player. I co-founded Alif Bank in 2014 as a microcredit organization in Tajikistan, so I'm from Tajikistan, Dushanbe, with amazing people, amazing, beautiful people. I think that's the main thing, starting something with amazing people. First of all, I'm not sure who assigned this topic to me, because I feel that attracting investment into the region that I come from is extremely difficult. It's just difficult. Excuse me. It is what it is. is extremely difficult. It's been extremely difficult, and I don't know. It's just.
But you are a bank and you are funding companies, so that's why you are here.
Thank you very much. Wherever you go, you know, investors would say that, they would question your region. They would say that, I'm not comfortable putting my money into the region. I'm not comfortable giving you, Central Asians, whatever stand you come from, it's not comfortable. And there are many reasons. And there were certain factors. We want this, we want treaties, we want protection. It wasn't the story of my company that I'm part of today. It was the lack of all these things. No one guaranteed anything for us. I graduated from university back in 2010 and came back to Tajikistan, not because I felt that the climate is beautiful and everything is just rosy and you can come and your money will multiply. It wasn't the illusion that I had, and my partner certainly. But it was that craze to do something for your home, okay? That excitement to be part of that, let's say, new Tajikistan, and later, of course, new countries. And then you come together with like-minded people who are, you know, would support you on that path. And you would have certain things in common. Of course, you would say, we have to abide by the rules and laws, even though 99% of the rest disregard them. 99% of the rest disregard taxation, laws, regulations, licensing, etc., etc., etc. I think I'm exaggerating. Not 99%, maybe less. 97. But still, it's important, Mamuka, to respect the rules and laws of the land. Okay, it's very important. And some of you, maybe some of you, who come from certain backgrounds where you would hear that, you know, this is how it's done here, whether you like it or not. This is the reality. You just close one eye and you just like everybody else. We didn't buy into this. We actually challenged the status quo, if you like. We said that we will work by the book, we will respect the taxation, we will pay all the taxes due, etc., etc., etc. And you know what? It worked out well. It was very unlikely for an entity in a challenging environment to become profitable. We actually did it. And thankfully, largely thankfully to the people that are, you know, some of them are present here, it worked. So basically, in 2019, we decided to enter Uzbekistan as an entity. As a fintech company, we decided to enter Uzbekistan, right? And you know what? It was the best decision ever. Because there's a reason why all of us, I keep mentioning Uzbekistan did this, Uzbekistan did that, because they deserve it. All the credit goes to Uzbekistan. It's the star of the region to me, in my understanding. However, my understanding is limited to Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Forgive me, because I haven't done business in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, in Georgia, in other beautiful countries of the region. The only exposure that I have is Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. And Uzbekistan, they're doing a great job. They're doing an amazing job. You can't even imagine. I've been there 3 years. I just recently moved from Dushanbe because my mission was over. Because in 2 years, we grew our assets to an extent where we overcame basically the assets in Tajikistan in 2 years. We've attracted so many talented people in Uzbekistan, you can't imagine. Beautiful, amazing people in the Republic of Uzbekistan. And of course, a lot of support from the fellows, the network, the CAMCA network. A lot of, here, please, round of applause. Farooq Akai is sitting there, he knows it. And last July 2021, we closed a investment round, and our company was valued around $100 million at the time. By the metrics back then, so we have multipliers, we have comparables from other regions. If we use the same multipliers today, this company grew 4x, the same company. Today, we applied for a banking license in Pakistan in March. So we're still waiting for the response from the Central Bank of Pakistan. And now we're entering the Emirates, the UAE, as well. And it's important to understand that it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to attract funding in our region. And what we lack to attract even more, we lack success stories. We need examples. We really need examples to see, to show the world that you can do business in this region. And it doesn't have to be connected to the president. It doesn't have to be connected to some sort of political elite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It can happen, and it's possible. And I think this is, once we have this, hopefully, once we really, really have those success stories, and I see this firsthand, those stories from Uzbekistan, slowly but surely in the rest of the region, the attractiveness of our region is an area to be lucrative enough for sophisticated investors will be much better. So I'll stop here if you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One brief question, please. What was the initial source of your capital? Was it institutional or was it private?
I lost my property. No, sorry, not lost. I sold my property. My partners sold their properties. We put up some capital because the capital requirement for the microcredit organization at the time was $200,000. So we managed to put that money together, and the rest, the Angell investment and the other basic, the series of investment, was friends and family, some attraction, and basically it shot up like this.
And the second point is more comment rather than question, but you can comment on my comment, is that probably since you grew so fast and so significantly in both countries means that there are businesses who are asking you to fund them, right?
Okay, we have three sources of revenue. It's buy now, pay later, BNPL in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, digital payments, simple digital payments. And third is remittances. Russia to Tajikistan, Russia to Uzbekistan, and this is why we're tapping into the UAE, outbound remittances, and that's why we're interested in Pakistan as well. So these are the three areas that we are focusing as of today. And SME is the small part of things.
Okay. Understood. So, wonderful presentations, a lot to talk about. If any of the members of the panel want to comment of what you've heard, you are welcome to. If not, then we'll open the floor for conversations. And brief questions. We'll start from there, and then here.
Hi, Nurlan Kshtabayev from Kyrgyzstan. Two questions. One to Kenneth. What kind of major bankability issues you see in the region? And another question to Zuhursho. It's quite well known in Tajikistan that any business growing drastically like yours is subject to interest from family. When do you think you may be subject to that interest, and how you are protected?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first one? I just missed your question.
Major bankability issues in the region for DFC?
Major bankable issues.
Bankability issues, yes.
Bankability. Meaning the commercial viability of the projects. That's a question, right? Whether the projects are bankable.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I can start,
yes,
if you don't mind. It's always relevant. It's a very interesting question. Of course, we do have preconceptions. It's difficult to work there, but it's not as difficult. And I think that risk is always relevant in the whole of CAMCA, and I don't know how to avoid answering or giving an answer which is not going to be very nice. But generally, we've been faring well vis-a-vis, let's say, the family, if you like, because, as I said at the very beginning, we've been paying taxes. We've been working very well, transparently, in terms of transparency, in terms of building a sustainable model with the integrity in place, with the right culture in place. And, you know, with not Tajikistan per se, but in many places out there, in many different regions, if you have enough reasons for someone to knock your door, in some places that probability is just higher. Okay? More reasons for somebody to come and say that I don't like you, basically. That's it. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Kenneth?
Yes, thank you. I would, I mentioned several things of what it is earlier, of what it is that a financial institution would be looking for, or DFC, but let me expand on a few. I guess one would be for looking at commercial viability, there's got to be a leverage of the project. Obviously, the closer that the more that equity has in the project, then there's likelihood that there's going to be a greater financial viability to it. There's greater skin in the game, so they're wanting to look for a certain amount of skin in the game and show that there is sufficient equity that is in the project. I think another big element is earning a foreign exchange, because our loans are primarily in US dollars. So entities that are exporting, entities such as tourism that are generating foreign exchange, those are the ones that help a great deal towards commercial viability, so that when the economic within the country starts to go down, that they've got another way out. I mean, other would be that there is sufficient track record. You want to be able to have people that have experience doing it, or being able to, it's always going to be a challenge when someone just sort of says, I think I want to retire now. I was a banker for 25 years, and now I'd like to retire and open up a hotel. Okay, that may be a great idea, but what do you really know about opening that hotel? Well, I don't know. It can't be that difficult, can it? I mean, you just you open some rooms, you hire a few people. It's a bit more than that. But so I think that what you want to, that's what I'm talking about as far as having that experience or that track record. So these are just some of the elements. What is that marketing plan? Is it just something that you talk to someone and you think that there really is a market, or is it something that has been out there that someone has checked it out and just sort of determined that there really is a market? So let me just stop there. But does that help? Thank you.
Question over there.
Yeah, I just want to applaud the people like Zuhursho and other entrepreneurs in Central Asia who are finding courage and determination to work with integrity and compliance in the region where 90% of business is running parallel bookkeeping. And I was, at my beginning of my career, I was working in a private firm. We had official accounts when we took a few pennies, and we had unofficial accounts when we ran most of our cash transactions. And it was not because we wanted to do this, but because that was the way for businesses to survive and not to put into the radar of families, authorities, etc., etc.
Please do not disclose everything here.
Yeah, yeah. And I presume organizations like DFC and other kind of amazing Western lawyers would look for the businesses who run transparently, who have the full disclosure of the books, who have a corporate compliance committees, who have the board, who have independent audit, everything instead. But that's a challenge in that kind of market. So we need to, organizations like us at SAIP and other institutes, we need to develop those kind of value proposition for business integrity work, for anti-corruption compliance work, for corporate governance standards. That's what we're trying to do. And in Tajikistan, in Uzbekistan, through Business Integrity Initiative, for example, in other parts of the world, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. But that's a challenge. It's still a challenge. So to identify viable investments is probably not that difficult in terms of competitive advantage of the business as such, but to identify a viable client who has the full disclosure of everything and who is compliant with the best standards is a challenge. So I just want to applaud again this kind of entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please. Mike here, if we can.
I mean, I can talk about.
Oh, we are not allowed to shout in this room.
I want to give a shout out. First of all, blew me away with your presentation. Sorry, I missed half of it. So you might have answered my question, but I missed everything. I was blessed to walk into some industries where they face like some crazy amount of challenges. So if I would walk into your organization, what would be the biggest challenge I would face right now? Or just generally as a whole as an organization? What is that one biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Thank you for the question.
Sorry if it's too broad.
That's fine. What is the main challenge that our organization is facing as of today? This is the question, correct?
Yes, if it's human capital, I don't know. It's up to you.
It's the biggest, I think, I don't know how it may sound, not sure, but it's, I think the rate of growth, it's a bit frightening because in a sense that when you're growing too fast, relatively fast, I guess, you want to make sure that you have the system in place which is sustainable to sustain that growth. Because it's about people, you have to have the right people, because all of a sudden you have, because you have option plan, let's say, all of a sudden you have up to, 20, 30, 40 people are becoming millionaires because of the shares that they're holding with you, etc. So, and that it's a big responsibility. And of course, with that growth, you have higher expectations of various stakeholders. You have central bank, you have your clients, you have your investors, etc., etc. All of them have certain expectations, and managing all that, I think, would be the number one challenge for us, which is a good news. It's not the government, it's not somebody else, etc. It's something which is internal that we have to deal with and manage properly. I hope I answered you.
I think it's a, yeah, okay, go ahead. Last question from the audience, because they're telling me that we have to conclude soon.
My question is more of legal nature. We know that the biggest development now part of the world is now the sanctions against Russia, which is the biggest trading partner for most of the countries in CAMCA region. How do you see the effect of sanctions on businesses in CAMCA? And does it mean that from now on our businesses will be basically cut off from any Western involvement or any Western investment? Because the businesses here will be afraid to deal with any country close enough to Russia. Thank you.
You want to comment?
Sure, I'll comment. I'm not a sanctions lawyer, so I'm an arbitration lawyer, but certainly our colleagues have been quite busy dealing with many of these questions. And I know, for example, our attorneys in the Tashkent office have been dealing with these exact types of questions. And yes, there are, it is going to be more complicated in order to ensure that you're in compliance. And that involves hiring external counsel in many situations to make sure that you are, fully in compliance with all of the various sanctions, not just from the US, but also from the EU, in operating your business. And I know in working with our colleagues in Uzbekistan, it is a big challenge. And I don't see that challenge going away anytime soon. But there are many specialists focused on this area who will be able to provide advice as needed to ensure that their operations remain in compliance with law.
My view on this is that most probably enforcement of secondary sanctions will start soon in a more kind of stronger way, and that will impact all the companies who deal with the Russian companies. And it will be difficult, not only for American companies to work with some other companies who deal with the sanctioned companies, but also lots of regional companies to operate. So that's quite a challenge. And down the road, if this continues, and most probably it will continue at least for maybe a couple of years, if not more than that, then so we have to somehow find the ways to work with each other more than with our northern neighbor, dear shared northern neighbor. I think probably I'll say a few words and we'll conclude on that. We learned that today that even if you have a difficult environment, while we see that there is improvements in the environment, while we'll see there are growing number of financial institutions and potential funding sources, we have it's not multilateral, it's unilateral, it's US development agency, but it fits in the larger picture of IFIs. So there are sources from this type of lending institutions. There are sources from regional lending institutions. And there are success stories of entrepreneurship in the region. So while we understand that the environment is not perfect, while we understand that there are many difficulties and pitfalls, while we understand that states are still too strong, operate too much assets, including land or other things, privatization should be priority for all the countries in the region, all of them, starting from Georgia and with Mongolia, and structural reforms attached to that, but still existing environment allows private sector to grow, to do business, and the fact that the DFC has investments in the region shows that there are qualified companies. There are multiple companies also funded by EBRD and IFC and others. So that demonstrates the growth potential of the region. And I'm sure next CAMCA meetings that will come soon, I mean next year, we'll see some new stories like bank story that we heard today. So and many more other stories that it's not the financial institutions only, obviously, that we want to see more in digital space or in infrastructure and so forth. So thanks to our wonderful panel for their contribution to the discussion. And thanks to all for listening.